How's it going, boys? My name is LC, and I hope you're having a merry little Christmas. And today we'll be covering a topic that is close to my heart. We're talking about the Kanto generation of Pokemon. I've always had a fascination with the aesthetic of early Pokemon. Times were simpler, the games always felt more authentic, the hand-drawn Ken Sugimori style made it seem like a homey and cozy care package, the Pokédex wasn't so massive, my parents' wallets were draining, everything just felt right. There were no hiccups and there were no gimmicks, just cut and dry, good old Pokémon. And I suppose that's the reason I always come back to revisit the earlier generations. They were the golden days. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe so we can get to 400 subscribers. Who doesn't know what Pokemon is? You could go to your grandmother with a Pikachu plushie and she'd probably be able to tell you what it is.
That's Mario!
Pokemon is a multimedia franchise owned by Nintendo that spans video games, anime, a trading card game, and several manga series. The franchise focuses on creatures known as Pokemon, with a heavy emphasis on location and adventure. Within the franchise, these Pokemon can be caught, trained, and used in battles, as well as serve as little friends that follow you throughout the several regions. Ideas for Generation 1 were developed as early as 1990 by creator Satoshi Tajiri with the aid of Mario's creator Shigeru Miyamoto. The original concept for Pokemon was called Capsule Monsters. The concept of collecting monsters came from Satoshi's childhood hobby of collecting bugs. There's a lot of artwork to be found in the Bulbapedia, but I'll share some here as well. Lots of Pokemon that appear in the official games originated from this era, such as fan favorites like Lapras and Gengar, among others. One thing that single-handedly represents the entirety of the first generation is the iconic art and style of Ken Sugimori, the main illustrator for the original Pokemon games. Sugimori was responsible for the artwork of all Kanto Pokemon, and was the designer for the following Pokemon: Ivysaur, Venusaur, Nidoking, Magnemite, Magneton, Ghastly, Haunter, Gengar, and Sugimori was also responsible for all of the watercolor style drawings on the old era Pokemon cards, with notable ones being Giovanni's Meowth and Polygraph. Atsuko Nishida is another key designer for the Pokemon franchise, who can be most noted for her designs for the starters Pikachu, the Evolutions, and the regional variants for Zorua and Raichu respectively, among many others. Nishida also was responsible for her more lush and peachy illustrations on the Pokemon cards, as shown here. Now, Pokemon Red and Green were the first video games in the series, and are the first versions of the games to be released in phases that would be called generations. Red, Blue, Green, and Yellow being Generation 1. Now, Pokemon Red and Green originally released in Japan, with subsequent titles Blue and Yellow being released later. Pokemon Blue was an improvement of Red and Green and would be released with Americanized translations for those in the West, releasing in North America as Pokemon Red and Blue. For a lot of people, the first generation of Pokemon is the gold standard, and for a lot of reasons. For one, this generation laid the groundwork for future games in the series, taking place in the region known as Kanto, and having the player collect 8 gym badges to become the champion at the end of the game. At the very beginning of the game, the player is given the chance to pick out their very first Pokemon, with the options ranging from a Fire-type Pokemon known as Charmander, a Water-type Pokemon known as Squirtle, or a Grass-type Pokemon known as Bulbasaur. In Pokemon Yellow, there is a slight difference in the beginning segment, and that is that you are given Pikachu, an Electric-type Pokemon that inevitably ended up becoming the mascot of the series, bringing us to another side of Generation 1. What did they do to our boy? Pikachu used to be a chonky boy. He used to be an absolute unit. In Atsuko Nishida's own words, this dumpling-shaped creature has no definition between its head and its body. And she would be right. And she would be a genius, because I wouldn't have in a million years been able to design such a perfect creature. Amazingly oblong, immaculate dimensions. Now that Pikachu has seemingly lost weight, he just doesn't feel the same. That scene of Ash dragging Pikachu with a rope wouldn't go as hard as it does if Pikachu wasn't fat. Make the boy fat again! Put some meat on his bones! If you were a big fan of Pokemon back in the day, then you're sure to remember all the urban legends that surrounded the game, like tapping A relentlessly to make catching Pokemon easier, or encountering Mew under the truck. These were all silly, but they were intriguing at the time, and genuinely caught my attention, to the point where I try a lot of these out to no avail, but still, it was enough to make me play the game to find out. Creepypastas about the first generation were super popular too, like Lavender Town Syndrome that allegedly caused kids to, or the stories of Blue's Raticate that died, or the man buried under the Pokemon Tower. These legends were all insane, and looking back as an adult, they're pretty dumb, but my 9-year-old brain was convinced that all of these were real. I'd be stupid to not mention the anime. The Pokemon anime is a series that consists of multiple shows within the main series that center around a trainer named Ash Ketchum who travels through different regions with his partner Pikachu. Generation 1 covers the Indigo League season, where Ash travels through the Kanto region to become a Pokemon Master. Both the games and the anime progress similarly, with the protagonist traveling through the region, visiting different cities, and battling the gym leaders. In the anime, Ash befriends many of the gym leaders, and some of them join him on his adventure, like Brock and Misty, who both become staples in the franchise later on. Brock became synonymous with his obsession yet fear of women, and always had to be dragged away by the ear because he was such a simp. A big trope that has continued throughout the entire series is the fact that Pikachu doesn't evolve, and it's because he refuses to. Earlier on, I wouldn't have had a problem with Pikachu evolving, but now that the series really has no end in sight, I think Pikachu evolving would have been awkward and would create a divide in eras where a generation would remember Pikachu and the other would remember Raichu. So I'm glad that they kept this consistency. On July 18th, 1998, the very first Pokemon movie would be released, with a plot centering around a Pokemon made in a lab called Mewtwo. In this movie, Mewtwo would face off against Mew, another legendary, but also the one Mewtwo was based off of, so there's a bit of jealousy there, which I always thought was funny because Mewtwo is ranting to Mew, meanwhile Mew is just bouncing around like a little guy. The impact the first generation of Pokemon had on the franchise is massive, and the legacy still lives on. Over the years, there's been remakes of the original games, revisits to the Kanto region, new evolutions to old Pokemon, and new forms that pay homage to the golden age of the franchise. But if we look back at when the franchise first broke out onto the scene, when it took the world by storm, things were much different compared to how they are now. In the lack of a better phrase, Pokemon had taken over the world, in all mediums. Pokemon cards were banned from schools across the United States. Groups were formed in hatred of Pokemon. Just the fact that Pikachu, a never-before-seen character up until then, was able to sell out stores faster than their equivalent to fidget spinners and cause more controversy than any human being was mind-blowing, and honestly made history for not only the gaming industry, but for the entire entertainment industry. And my life wouldn't have been affected as it was had I not went to GameStop with my siblings on that one random autumn day to pick up my very first video game. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. And subscribe to my second channel, Elsie's Hangout, where I'll be doing my first ever Let's Play of Pokemon Fire Red. And with that, have a damn good one. See ya.